Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Carl. I'm your host, Carl Zoellner, one of the attorneys here with Anderson Business Advisors. And today I wanted to touch on a question that's been coming up relatively frequently, and that is, should you put your primary residence in an LLC for asset protection? So, unfortunately, there is not a bright line rule or a clear yes or no for this type of scenario. So I've got to run you through a few analysis points here on where that may be appropriate. Because sometimes it may make sense to put your personal residence in a LLC. Sometimes it doesn't. So let's talk about a couple of those points. One of the points you look at is, what is your state's homestead exemption? The first place we look for our asset protection are in the state laws that provide us with those types of protection. So if I'm looking at Texas or Florida, they have unlimited homestead protection. And your homestead protection, just as a quick review here, is it protects the amount of equity in your property. So if you have a $500,000 home, you have a $300,000 loan against the property and the entire loan's still outstanding, then you have $200,000 in equity. That $200,000 is protected by your state's homestead exemption if you have an unlimited homestead. So pretty nice when the state already protects that piece for you. Some states, though, have a very low or limited homestead exemption. So in a state with a very low or limited homestead exemption, you may consider putting your property in LLC, because even if the homestead does not apply to a property in an LLC, you're sort of weighing the risk against what are my protections, what are not. What else we look at when we look at does it make sense to put my home in a homestead or my personal residence in a homestead is normally we do not put personal assets into business entities. Those tend to be business assets that belong in there. So before I consider putting my personal property or my personal residence into that LLC, you've got to understand you're accepting some risk by doing so, that business assets belong in LLCs and corporations and limited partnerships, things like that. So just be aware that you would then be saying, well, I'm not really respecting the boundaries of an LLC because the business purpose here is sort of unclear. Now, of course, there's a bunch of arguments you can make that you're holding for appreciation, or really that your personal residence is as much as an investment as any of your other properties. Fine, I'm willing to say that's a possibility, but it's one of those analysis points I was talking about. So that tends to be what I look at from that perspective when we start talking about should your personal residence be in an LLC. And just a reminder or something to sort of tuck in the corners of what you probably heard. If I have a land trust in place where the beneficiary is an LLC, same sort of analysis, same sort of scenario. The only thing the land trust is really changing from that perspective is what an outside party can currently see from, say, a deed filing. So where it would show up if you put it directly in an LLC, would show up as the LLC is the owner of the property. Within a land trust, you would see the name of the land trust and the trustee as the owner of that LLC. But if the underlying beneficiary sitting behind it is still an LLC, the same analysis still applies. Doesn't really belong in an asset or a limited liability company that's meant to protect business assets. So that's my main concern. And like I say, opinions differ on this a little bit, but I'm not usually excited or super comfortable when I see a personal residence in an LLC. Other attorneys are fine with it. I'm just giving you my opinion on this piece. The other piece to bear mentioning is, then what would I suggest for your personal residence? I do like the anonymity portion, so I would still use the land trust. So I'd have a land trust with a nominee trustee to get that anonymity. And then I would have the beneficiary be my living trust so I could pass that asset on without my estate having to go through probate. So to me, that's the more congruent solution that I like. Like I said, but we can weigh the cost and benefit and what's appropriate for you and your entity structure. So this isn't a one-size-fits-all scenario, and Anderson's not a one-size-fits-all firm, but I want to take you all through a couple of those analysis points in there. The other thing, or last thing I'll leave you with, is there are some other tools out there However, they're very specialized and usually for very expensive properties or people who have basically a lot of funds available that they don't plan on utilizing. So we'd be looking at things like different types of trusts in that scenario, but just as a FYI there too. So that's it. That's this episode of Coffee with Carl. I want to thank you all for joining me. As always, please keep taking advantage of all of our free content out there with, Toby's Tax Tuesday, Tony Talks, Clint's YouTube channel, also all the free classes we do. Take advantage of it. We provide free education because we like to have educated clients and we want to be speaking the same language. So take advantage of it. It's out there. It's for free. So catch you next time. Thanks for everyone joining me with Coffee with Carl.